Hey all, are we doing well? I'm currently walking around exploring a little bit, so I thought I'd take some time to share some tips with you guys, or specifically the newer photographers out there. What I did was, on my little educational Facebook group, I created a little post asking for what people needed help with. And a lot of people seem to need some help with figuring out gear and a couple other stuff for when they're new and starting out. So what I've done is I've made a short little list in regards to gear and such which they might find helpful, especially a bunch of other stuff. So today we'll be covering gear. I made a list because I forget stuff. So it works easier if I have a list. So on my list we'll be covering 3 things today. We're going to be covering gear, specifically aimed towards beginners, as well as we're going to be covering some shooting suggestions, as well as some editing tips which might help them out quite a bit. So let's just jump straight into it while I'm walking to the forest thing. Let me show you what I'm doing actually. Turn around. So I'm busy going into the woods. So before I disappear for good, I thought I'd share some tips. So one of the things when it comes to photography and starting out in photography is your gear. A lot of people have a lot of concerns in regards to what gear should they use, what gear not. And honestly, just use what you've got. I mean, if you've got an old camera, digital, use it. If you've got an old phone, use that as well, or just any phone, because your phone does have a camera in it. Some better than others though, unfortunately. But if you are on a tight budget, some camera options you can have a look at is on the Nikon side. I'll put up pictures or something somewhere. You can have a look at the Nikon D3500. It's not a bad camera. It's a good entry level into the Nikon DSLR system. Or you can have a look at the Canon 250D. It's also not a bad camera for what you pay for. It's relatively on the more affordable side. And if you're looking to get into mirrorless at a lower price point, you can have a look at something like the Fujifilm X-T200. Awesome tiny little camera I've used on myself. It's not bad at all. It covers a lot of things you could want. It does do video and photo coverage quite well, and the lenses are decently fine. So with those camera bodies, lenses which I would recommend you have a look at for the Nikon and Canon, you can sometimes buy those in a kit that comes with an 18 to 55 lens, which covers a lot of what most new photographers would need to do. Sorry, I'm extremely unfit. If I die and you see this, delete my browser history, please. Okay, but in regards to lenses, most of the times you can pick up the Nikon and the Canon in a nice twin lens bundle, which gives you a 18 to 55 and sometimes a 50 to 200 or a 70 to 300, depending on where you buy, what time of the year you buy, and stuff like that. On the Fujifilm side, the X-T200 also, you can get it in a kit with a 15 to 45 lens. Not the best lens, but it's quite nice. It gives you like a super wide and a kind of medium look to it as well. So you can also get that in a kit, I think, with a longer lens, but I might be corrected on that one, unfortunately. Now, in regards to lens recommendations, every starting person, they normally move towards a Nifty 50. That's a 50mm f1.8 lens. It's a decent lens. It gives you great separation for your subject and your background. As well, it's also really good for low light, and I know somebody did ask in regards to low light equipment, so let's cover that. If you're shooting low light, or you plan to shoot low light, you can always just get the 51.8. It's a awesome low light lens. It's a good entry into getting into your low light situations and such. On the Fujifilm side though, keep in mind you do not get the 51.8. You can rather look at something like the 35 f2. It's a nice lens. A lot of people love the Fujifilm 35mm f2 lens. It's nice and sharp as well, so it's not bad. So those are the lens options in regards to that. Now back to my list, because I almost forgot this. Another thing which is awesome for beginner photographers which are on a tight budget is a reflector. You can oftentimes pick up a 5-in-1 reflector. Awesome tool to have. It gives you the ability to reflect light back into shadows. For example, if you have where I am now and there isn't much light, you could, as an example, move your subject there in the shade and then reflect the light using a 5-in-1 reflector back into the shadows where your subject is, and that should give you nice soft light for your subject. It will help you work with the light a little bit better. So that covers the budget-ish gear for starting out photography. Just grab anything you can which fits within your budget and price range. But most times, if you're starting out, you're not going to be taking photography too seriously. Just use your phone. There's nothing wrong with your phone at all. But if you do plan to take photography a little bit more seriously, as well as shooting landscapes and all that type of stuff, yes, try and look for a camera, preferably something that fits into your budget. But if you do not find something that fits into your budget, look on the used market. There's nothing wrong with using used gear. A lot of the stuff that I use is used gear. This camera that's filming me right now, that's used. My main camera that I use in the studio, that's used. All my lights, everything's used. I try to stay away from buying new, because I don't know, it just feels off buying stuff at such high prices when you can just find a properly used one at an affordable rate. So do not shy away from using used gear. Sometimes it saves you a lot of money and a lot of time as well. So give that a go. So that covers gear. Let's move on to some shooting tips for when you're starting out in photography. Now, with a lot of cameras, you can change the different modes that you shoot in. So preferably, or a lot of new photographers like to stay in auto and just shoot away, but that doesn't give you a lot of control on your camera. Rather use the aperture priority mode. It's a little A on the dial, or the P or the S, or whichever one of those modes, but play around with them. Especially when you're new in photography and you've got no idea what the settings do. Just change your camera into the M mode or manual, change your settings, see what happens. A slower shutter speed allows you to have more motion blur in your shots, good for long exposures, and a fast shutter speed helps you freeze motion when you're doing photography. So that helps when you're shooting sports or portraits and stuff, and you do not want to have a lot of motion blur in your shots. I'm tired, I'm going to do this. And so your shutter speed allows you to either show movement or freeze movement, which is very handy to have, as well as it affects your overall exposure on your photos. Same goes to aperture and ISO. Those things do affect your photos quite well. So play around with those settings, those free ones, and see what the way that your camera handles all of this stuff. Now, another thing you need to do when you're shooting is keep an eye on the light, because light is your friend. You can either have good light or bad light, but you will always have light. As an example of a little bush that I showed you, that one right there, it's got some nice side light coming in from the sun, so it could be handy to shoot somebody in it. But the only way I will know, well, actually I'll just go to the bush and I'll show you while we're talking about that. So finding good light to shoot in is always something which is very important to do. So you can either find light like this, nice side light, or you can just move to the shadows. Now currently the sun is busy setting, so it's giving us side light or nice soft light down that side. But that's where a reflector comes in quite handy, because you can reflect the sun back into your shots for you. So always keep an eye on your light. Your light is what you capture anyway, so you need light. Apart from your light and your settings, use your feet, and because your feet allow you to move closer to spaces with better light. Not only that, but like me, and you're walking around and you're looking at new spaces to take photos in, it's often good to use your feet and your camera to move around to find different angles. So you can find uphill's bad. So a good angle, for example, for female subjects is your camera high shooting down at a female subject. Male subjects other way around, camera low shooting up at your male subject. Now the reason for this is I need to breathe. The reason for this is a lower angle shooting up normally works well for male subjects because it shows a lot of dominance. Whereas with a female subject, you might not want to do that. You might want a more submissive look, which is often more beautiful for females as well. So then you would aim high and shoot low at them. Play with your angles. Angles are your friend. So those are some shooting tips, gear tips covered as well. Let's move to editing, because editing is also very, very important. Taking a photo is just half the work. You need to edit your shots. So when you take a bunch of photos, it's normally good to organize those photos when you do save them on your PC or your laptop or wherever you do save them. So try and find something that you can use to organize them, which works well for you. I like to put folders, folder name, date, whatever happened on that date, and just keep going like that. That way, when I do know that something happened some day that I'm looking for, I can just easily find it, go into the folder. It's sitting right there for yourself. Now, don't be like me and have an unsorted folder of 200,000 photos. No, that's bad. Organize your stuff. Organizing your stuff now saves you a lot of time in the future, because just organizing your stuff makes it easy to find stuff, to edit stuff, and just make the workflow a little bit easier as well. Now, when you do come to editing, sorry, I need to check my notes because I made notes. I keep forgetting stuff, damn it. Editing is also a lot of fun. Software bits I can recommend, which are free to use and quite powerful. Use GIMP. It's a Photoshop alternative. It can do basically everything that anybody would need that's just messing around, having fun. Photoshop is also good, but you need to pay for Photoshop monthly. So a lot of new photographers, they don't have that type of money, so using alternative software is a really good way to go. GIMP is a good one to use. Darktable is also really good to use, and those two pieces of software basically cover everything that you need. But it's very important when you do edit, doesn't matter which software you use, keep eye on your saturation. It gets bad when you raise your saturation too much. Now what I mean by that is, I'm actually going to change this video as I'm talking about saturation, because let's just have a look. Yeah, saturation on the list. It's a big one. Now when you have your saturation down too low, I'll turn it all the way down now so you can have a look. Your photo becomes black and white. So that's one way that you can convert your shots to black and white. It's nice and easy and simple. But when you go all the way to the other side of a saturation, I'll do that now. Notice how the greens and stuff just look odd, and my skin tone should look like really bad. So always remember, your saturation has a large impact on what you want to show in your shots. So try to keep it on the down low or raise it when needed, but always remember, very saturated colors will be distracting, and when they're distracting attention away from your main subject. In this case, a tired me, because I'm not very fit and I need to go uphill again. It's going to suck so much. But keep an eye on your saturation, your exposure as well. Normally you would get your exposure correct when you're busy taking photos, but if you do need to change your exposure when editing, try not to overdo it. Your highlights, as example, don't blow them out. Your shadows, don't try to keep them super dark, or just by removing a lot of shadows. I see a lot of new photographers like to do that. They just remove all the shadows. Now the problem with when you remove all the shadows, I'll see if I can do it in the video as well, that removes a lot of contrast in your shots. When you remove contrast, your shots become flat, and flat shots are not very nice. So remember, be mindful with your shadows. Don't remove all of them. Removing all of them, it's not good. It's not good. It's not very good. Okay, so that covers a couple of basic stuff just to get you going in regards to gear, shooting, and editing, and organizing. Organizing should be one video by itself, I think, because that's stupidly important. But hey, that should get you going. If you've got questions, drop them down below, and I'll get to them all as soon as I can. It's not a problem at all. Now, some final thoughts in regards to starting out photography. Have fun. Come on, you're just grabbing photos. It shouldn't be that difficult. Take a photo of anything, share it to friends and family, upload it to Facebook, have fun. That's the entire idea behind photography, is to relax, have fun, and just keep going with it. The more you shoot, the better you will become. Your first 10,000 photos will be crap. That's a given. But the more you shoot, the more you realize what your gear does, how your camera responds to certain lighting situations and stuff like that. Remember, what you see with your eye, that's not what your camera sees. You need to tell your camera what it's busy seeing and get the shot correct. So work on that and have fun while you're doing it, and try to meet new photographers. That's always fun. It's nice having some photography friends which you can hang out with, talk some photography stuff and just mess around with. It's always nice. And I did make another note in regards to final notes. Yes, shoot lots. Oh wait, I covered everything. Damn notes. Just have fun. Come on, it's photography. That's what we do. We have fun. We mess around with a lot of stuff. We buy a lot of gear. But most of all, stay safe.